Hey everybody, welcome to the Jim Masters Show live entertainment lifestyle variety talk show series. How's everybody doing today? It's so good to see all your smiley faces wherever you're watching around the world. This show originates from the New York area. We're along the southern New England coast between New York and Boston in the USA. And we welcome everybody who's watching from all across the United States, coast to coast and beyond, our friends to the north in Canada, folks who watch in Mexico, South America, Europe as well, throughout Asia, Africa, Australia, New Zealand. We hear from all around the world, and we love all of you. Thanks for joining us on our Entertainment Lifestyle Variety Talk Show series, where we're bringing back the lost art of conversation with extraordinary guests who are coming in from Broadway and Hollywood, television, film, stage, music, comedy, culinary arts, sports, inspiration, and life in general. Thanks for all your enthusiasm for our series as well. We're approaching almost 800 episodes we've done live 7 days a week in just 2 years' time, playing off my background in TV and radio. And it's just extraordinary. All of the emails that we get and the messages we get in Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all the love we get on the YouTube channel that houses all these great episodes. We thank you so much for the support and all the love, or lovity as we call it here on the show. And we'll keep these great conversations coming. These warm conversations, entertainment. We've had guests that have performed live. They've done everything from comedy to singing to acting presentations, all kinds of cool things. Even psychics have come by. Little of everything here on the show for all of you. Hope you're doing well. Gang, it's a real honor and a pleasure to have you here all the time. If you'd like to comment, now our lovely chat room, as we call it, the Jim Master Show lovely chat room is open and available. And you can comment when you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. It's a gift we give you, all of you, for the support and watching and supporting the series. So the chat room is open and available live right now when the show is live. You can chat amongst yourselves. You can say hello. Maybe we'll even sprinkle a comment or two here across the screen during our live show. Busy day for me. I had 4 radio shows to host, and then we had a TV shoot. Got another TV shoot in the morning that we're scripting right now. So busy times, but I love all this stuff. And I love having you guys with us here. I've got an amazing guest. I've got somebody who's a legend in the music business and so much more. He is an extraordinary, renowned entertainment manager, brand consultant, public relations specialist, and he has penned this extraordinary book, The Fame Game. Let me tell you a little bit about his background. We're talking about Ramon Hervey II. This is absolutely a page turner, folks. You're going to absolutely love it. Now, Ramon himself has earned global recognition for his work as an entertainment manager, brand consultant, public relations specialist. Since founding and launching Hervey Company as a multi-faceted boutique entertainment firm, he has represented a diverse and impressive roster of entertainers across a wide spectrum of everything from contemporary music genres such as pop and rock, rhythm and blues, hip hop, jazz, gospel. He also served as executive producer for several films, television, and live events, including the Peabody Award-winning documentary Chisholm 72, Unbought and Unbossed, and the anniversary album NBA 50, and was a music supervisor for the NAACP Award-winning film Free Angela and All the Political Prisoners. His book that you see on the screen there is really amazing. It's incredible. He's somebody, as a pioneer in Hollywood, who broke glass ceilings for African Americans while representing Berry Gordy's Motown legends like Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, the Bee Gees, Richard Pryor, Bette Midler, Vanessa Williams, Paul McCartney, Quincy Jones, Tina Turner, Kenny, Babyface Edmonds, Rick James. I know so many favorites here, right? Daryl Hall John Oates and Muhammad Ali as well. Also working with the Jacksons, including Michael Jackson, the Commodores with Lionel Richie, Natalie Cole, Luther Vandross, and so many more. And of course, Vanessa Williams too. And that is really an impressive roster. He's still working in the business. That's just really the short list, gang, of his extraordinary work. Some of your favorite artists he's had an opportunity to work with and help along the way over the years. You see Richard Pryor there. First was Natalie Cole, Diana Ross, as I mentioned, Stevie Wonder, the incredible Luther Vandross, the Jacksons, Marvin Gaye, even Bette Midler, And there's Daryl and John, Tina Turner, the Commodores, worked with, of course, the incomparable Quincy Jones, as I mentioned, Muhammad Ali, Rick James, of course, Vanessa Williams, and even the Bee Gees. We'll talk about these stories and so much more. Detailed in the Fame Game, there is that fantastic cover. Isn't that nice? Yeah, it's an insider's playbook for earning your 15 minutes. That's right. And not everybody, he's going to tell you, not everybody has the luxury of 15 minutes. And there's a whole thing, 15 minutes, what happens? 10 minutes, what happens? I think 5 minutes, what happens? 1 minute. It's a whole other story. But it's really a fascinating read. I was so excited to have him here on the show, coming to us from New York City. Let's welcome, again, everybody, put your hands together and feel free to comment in our live lovely chat room right now. We are live on the air. Ramon Hervey II, surrounded by all of his fabulous accolades in the beautiful room where he wrote the book. Ramon, welcome to the Jim Masters Show Live. It's an honor and pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's a pleasure to join you on your show, and I appreciate the invite and look forward to speaking to you.
This is amazing. Oh, the pleasure is all mine. How did you first get involved? What inspired you to get into the music business as a whole? Were you raised with music all around you growing up in your household?
No, I really wasn't raised with a lot of music. My dad and my mother were both lovers of jazz, but on a very limited scale. And they would play I think we maybe had 8 records, and they played those records like I remember one Ray Charles, Hit the Road Jack. I've heard that
Oh,
record probably 1,000 times, and I couldn't stand it. By hearing so much, I didn't really appreciate that music when I was young, and as I got older, obviously, I realized how incredible an artist Ray Charles was. But just a few things like that, and then when I was in high school, I developed my own musical taste, and I was a big fan of rock and soul, and Jimi Hendrix has been one of my heroes for the longest time. And whenever I played Jimi Hendrix, my mom would just say, turn off that noise. She had
yeah.
no appreciation for Jimi Hendrix. So I think I just sort of developed it, and then I really started my music career in London after I had become a flight attendant for Pan Am Airlines, and I got
That's
laid off.
right.
I started. I got a job as a writer publicist at a pretty well-known talent agency at the time in the mid-'70s called Starlight Artists. They were in the Notting Hill section of London, and I lived in London. I ended up staying there for 4 years. The first year and a half was as a flight attendant for Pan Am. I was one of the
Yeah,
first black men to be hired by Pan Am. At the time, there were
that's
no
right.
American airlines that actually had men. A
Right.
lot of European, like Lufthansa, British Airways, and all those European airlines had Air France. They all had men, but in the States, it was all women. So I was one of the first male and first black to get that job.
Did you enjoy that? Did you get a chance to see the world?
I did. It
Yeah.
was a life-changing opportunity for me, and it was a really fun because it was before the union, so everyone was really young, and we would go out and party, on our wherever we went, and it was really enlightening. I learned a lot about life and culture in a lot of different places that I would have never gotten a chance to see. So I'm really
Yeah.
grateful for that time in my life. And again, it was before the union, so. Um, Once the unions came in, it changed a lot in terms of uh, the age group. It was like I did it post college. Like
Right.
instead of going to law school, I decided I wanted to travel, and that was a great way to get paid. And instead of doing it the backpacking way,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So I ended up. We had 3 choices for bases. It was either London, Washington D.C., or Boston, and I was the only guy that got a chance to get based in London. There's 5 of us from our class of about 43 uh, got based in Heathrow Airport, and so I flew out of there for the whole year and a half that I worked for Pan Am. And
Wow.
then when I started working for Starlight, they had a group called Marmalade. They had the Bay City Rollers, Clem
Hmm.
Curtis and the Foundations, a duo named Mac and Katie Kassoon. they were pretty, they were a reputable, small boutique agency in London at the time. And that
Tell
was a
us
great
about
time.
that was a great time in music just as a whole, right? All the
Yeah,
different
David
genres.
Bowie, Alvin
Yeah.
Stardust, Gary Glitter. Yeah,
The
it was
whole
glam
London
rock.
vibe.
Elton John was huge at that
Yeah,
time. I remember
right.
I got to see Elton John, and he was just incredible. He was at the height of his career in those years. So there was a lot of great talent in London at that time.
Did you make it over to Windsor Castle or Buckingham Palace at all?
Yes,
You
yes,
did?
yeah. I made it to Windsor. I didn't live too far from Windsor. I used to hang out on the lawn outside of Windsor and just sit there and imagine what life would be back in those days. But
Inside the buildings. Yeah.
yeah, it reminisced a little bit watching everything that went on with the
Yeah.
death of
Queen Elizabeth.
the Queen Elizabeth and that unbelievable funeral and everything. It's just
Yeah.
the specter. It's amazing when you think that culture it goes back to it's 1,200 years
Yeah.
since the monarch has existed in England, and
You're right.
she's one of only 6 women to be queen out of I think 60 something monarchs that have
Yeah.
governed England since the monarch started.
And 70-year reign,
Yeah,
which
70
is we'll
years.
never see that again, right?
Yeah,
In
it's the
our
longest.
life.
I think it's also not only in England. She is the longest standing, but I think she's either the first or second in of all monarchs in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Absolutely incredible. Tell us the Bay City Rollers story that you were telling me.
Oh, the Bay City Rollers story. Well, when one of the first, they were the biggest group. I mean, everybody was, suggesting that or comparing them to the Beatles.
Right. My
Uh,
cousin had posters all over her bedroom.
yeah, no, they were huge. I never thought that they were as talented as the Beatles, to be
Right.
honest.
Right.
And I did find out that they were discovered by or put together by two very famous songwriter producer, Phil Coulter and Bill Martin.
Bill
And they
Coulter, who
recorded a
was
couple of records, and they found the guys to to become the face of the music, more or less. And the records were recorded by session singers, and
session,
then this
right?
group, was pieced together. And I mean, they pulled it off for about a year or so, and then they kind of got full of themselves, and they decided they wanted to do the second record on their own. So they fired both Bill and Phil, and they went on. And if you followed their career, it didn't really last much longer.
Right.
But Bill and Phil went on and recorded what would have been the second Bay City Rollers album on a group called Kinney, another 5 English guys that they put together, and they had a nice run on that next record. So they actually created
Absolutely.
2 big groups out of 2 records that were pre-recorded.
So when you were there in London, how long were you there for, and what were some of the projects that you were working on?
Well, again, I was working with those musical artists that I told you about, and then
Yeah.
I left the agency and I became a editor of a magazine, a couple of magazines or fanzines. One was called Poster and one was called Superstar.
Oh yeah.
And these were magazines. One was built on, so you'd have 4. There were spreads of posters. So the editorial was on the back of the posters, but you could pull it out so that you'd have these big, 18-inch by 18-inch posters that you could put on the wall.
Yeah.
And it was a small Hamlet Publishing, I think was the name of it. And it was just 3 of us. One guy did a fishing magazine, and then I worked on these other 2 magazines. And we had an art director. And I told him, I said, look, I don't want to be. We have to make it look like we have more people than just me. So I made up. I wrote the whole magazine myself, but all the stories. But I made up names so it make it look like we had more of a staff. So I
That's
did that for yeah. So I did that for about a year, another year and a half. So that between those 3 jobs, the editor and whatever, and then I ended up coming back um, to the States and started my musical career in Los Angeles.
And what was that like, sort of getting off the ground with the knowledge that you were able to sort of cultivate in London and then come to LA, which is a different scene. and then sort of from the ground floor up, put everything together yourself. How did you manage to do that? What was that
Well,
like?
it was a process of starting over because as an American, when you go to England, particularly as a writer, you had to learn English. I mean, proper English. They don't spell things the same way. You know, it's their language. We adopted it from them. So a lot of the like colors with a U, a OU, and a lot of things like theater is RE at the end instead of ER. So I had to learn to write in real proper English, and then I had to learn to unlearn that style and go back to just being an American. So it was an interesting process, and I wanted to continue writing in the States, and I applied. I called Rolling Stone, and I wanted to do, but everything was on spec, and I needed to get paid for my work, and I ended up getting a part-time job, believe it or not, at a old photo booth. These little photo
The little photo mats. Yes.
yeah, they
They
were
would,
little
oh,
shacks that sold
one of the
film, and you
reasons
could
why
take
they went
film
under,
together. Pardon?
one of the reasons why they went under too, not just because of the change in digital technology, but those booths were always robbed because the person would be trapped in there. They can't get out.
Well, I worked at a place in the hood in Los Angeles, and they actually, they were very small. In fact, if I moved like 6 inches either way, I'd knock over something.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like 6'1", 180, and they're not really built for a guy my size. But they used to have a lot of women.
Yeah.
And the women, like guys would come there, but I actually got called and people said they were going to rob the
They were
place.
making appointments. I'm going to come and
Yeah,
get.
yeah, they'd call and say, hey, I'm coming there to rob. I go, okay, thanks for the heads up.
That's
And then, I would like leave. I'd say
yeah.
to the manager, there was a Pioneer chicken place right next door. And I said, hey, I'm sitting over here. I'm waiting. I got a call saying the place is going
Yeah.
to get robbed. I'll let you know if anything happens. If it doesn't, then I'll go back into work. I
Yeah.
never could understand. I mean, we didn't have. I mean, it's film
Right.
processing. It's not like you could get. It's not an expensive endeavor to get film processed. So there wasn't
Right.
a lot of cash on hand or whatever. But that's why they hired me because they thought I would look more intimidating,
Yeah.
and that people wouldn't rob it. But yeah, that's a true story.
Now you hail originally from Chicago?
Yeah, I was born in Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah.
And then, moved to other areas,
Yeah, my
Springfield,
dad was in the
Massachusetts.
service, so we moved around. I only lived in Chicago. I think we left Chicago when I was about 2 years old.
So 2
But
years
all
old.
my family were from south side of Chicago, Hyde Park, and then also I had a lot of family in Evanston, Illinois, which is a
Illinois.
suburb right
Uh,
outside of, and Northwesterners there, and yeah.
we had Ava Cherry on the show recently, and she was
Oh,
talking about how, Chicago influenced her, musically through the years. And then, of course, her time in London with David Bowie and
yeah.
the whole thing, really fascinating. So then you moved to New England, right up to the Springfield, Massachusetts area and other parts of Massachusetts.
Yes, exactly. And then I went to elementary school there, and then when I graduated, when I was going into middle school or junior high school, my dad got transferred to Vandenberg Air Force Base in Lompoc, California, which is about an hour north and inland from Santa Barbara. And so that's where I went to junior high school and high school. And then I graduated. I went to Whittier College for 4 years. And then I got that job at Pan Am. And
What were you studying in college? Were you studying music?
no, I went to college to be a lawyer, actually.
Oh, you gonna be
Yeah.
so you
I was
have the
fascinated. I was one of my most one of my favorite television programs was Perry Mason,
yeah,
and I just
Raymond
loved
Burr.
the way he never lost a case, and I liked the way that he conducted. It was you that was he always had it was never the person that was convicted. And
Right.
I always thought that would be, I like the drama of the court and everything. But then when I got into college, I saw that actually that whole court thing isn't, most of the deals are made behind the scenes, and that lawyers really don't want to spend money in court if they don't have to.
Right.
So that kind of, I mean, I probably could have done more research at the time, but it was one of those things where it was very popular, particularly for people, minorities, if you could be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, but also it was flooded. There was a lot of lawyers and doctors around.
Yeah.
And I decided, I'm going to travel and figure out something else that I want to do instead of going to law school.
What would you consider one of your personal, and we're going to talk extensively about the book, but for you yourself, what would you consider one of your first early, crucial, biggest breaks for you in your career?
I guess I would have to say that my biggest break was, I actually got hired to work for Motown um, when I was working at Photomat, the Photomat booth. A friend of mine, a well-known photographer now, his name is Bruce Tolliman, and he was a photographer for Soul magazine, which was a very popular R&B magazine in LA, and the founder, Regina Jones, started it. And Bruce called me and told me that he knew about an opening for a junior publicist at Motown Records, and that if I wanted to, he would refer me to the guy who was looking for someone, and that was Bob Jones.
Mm.
Bob Jones later became a publicist exclusively for Michael Jackson, but at the time, he pretty much controlled all the black, well, a lot of people don't realize that Motown did have white artists, but he had more the second tier artists. And there was another guy named Mike Roshkin who was a vice chairman of Motown. And Mike Roshkin actually represented all the heavyweights like Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder. So they had it, the way Berry Gordy set it up, he had the visions within his own company of who got to work with who.
Right.
But that was a really big break for me because I had never worked for a label before on that side of the business. I'd been working on the artist side. So to see how labels work, how they prioritize, who gets attention, who gets marketing dollars. Also, Barry was running, one of the most successful independent record companies of the day at that time. So learning the difference between how an independent record company works as opposed to a major distributor like Warner Brothers or Sony or any of those companies in those days. It was a fast track lesson and way to learn the business.
What were some things that you learned right off the bat, certain things about how the industry works, or just even with Motown, some things that even still stick with you today that you learned early on then?
Well, I think the biggest thing was the class structure or the strata. And the first lesson that I learned, I remember I was invited to be part of a marketing meeting for Stevie Wonder, and it was for his Songs in the Key of Life album, which is probably the most famous record of his life,
Absolutely.
as an artist. And I realized the only reason he got that meeting, the meeting was to discuss what the label was going to do on behalf of the record. So Stevie came, and I was a huge Stevie Wonder fan even before I went to Motown. And I remember one of the things that he said in the meeting was that he wanted a billboard so big, so bright, that even he could see it. And he had that kind of sense of humor, but he
That's
was serious
incredible.
about he wanted a billboard in Times Square. And that's what was the reference to that. It was the fact that the power that he yielded as he was one of their most successful artists. So he could command for the label to sit with him and to explain to them what they're going to do for this project. And I learned that that's how, the difference between being a superstar at a label and being a up and coming artist, where you would never get an opportunity to have the whole staff of a label sit down and work with you. It's a real struggle. So I learned that, and that really helped me as I transitioned into PR and later to management, having that firsthand knowledge and seeing how divisive it can be and how difficult
Yes,
it is for artists to feel like they're getting their worth, their value from a label
absolutely
on a
too.
consistent basis. Because when you're not, when you don't have the sales, it's to me, it's a fame and is sort of it's a union of commerce and art, and when those two things mesh together and they're commercially viable, it does create success, and through commercial success, you can become famous. But it's not that you have to be successful first, and I think that's the challenge with every artist is to find those partners, and as you begin your journey, that are going to be supportive of you and are going to help you be successful. And that means invest in you in the marketing and the PR and the advertising, all the radio in those days, all these things that have changed now. There's a total, labels are not what they used to be. So they depend, the people that distribute records and the way that records are consumed today, or they're streamed, and the streaming services are really in charge of our industry now. They really dictate who gets played.
It's
And
changed so
yeah.
much, even the film industry too, and television and everything. What are some other ways you've seen, quote, fame evolve in our society in the years that you've been in the thick of it all?
I think that, well, obviously social media has had a major impact. And I think it's interesting that it's had such an impact because social media has only been around for 12 years.
Yeah.
It's like a
Seems longer,
preteen. It's
right?
not even a teenager. But yet we've been so overwhelmed by it that they've almost convinced everyone that you can't survive or be successful without social media. And the reality is that only 1% of the people that are on social media, whether it's Instagram, uh, Meta, Facebook, all of them, um, only 1% are at those really high threshold, like 1 million followers or over. And most of the most famous people on social media are the people that are already famous,
Right.
who have helped to bring more fans to social media. So, the most famous person in the world today is Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Now, he was famous before social media, but he has used social media to even escalate his fame more. And that's well, a lot of people don't realize that. But what it has given people a voice, and it has given people an opportunity to be entrepreneurs and to start their own businesses, and they can be successful. They can earn money, good money, but they're not all going to get famous.
Right. Right.
I did some research on my book, and one of a very famous mathematician, scientist, and author, I think it's Samuel Arbson, created a formula where he used how you get on Wikipedia, and he divided it by the amount of people in the world, which is over 7 billion, and he came up with a figure that 0.00086 of people in the world will ever become famous
Mm.
or living are famous. So
It's
your
like winning the
percentage
lottery.
of being famous or not is, this
Right.
idea that everyone can be famous or that you can sustain fame is just not realistic. All those famous people that you mentioned that I've been fortunate enough to work with, none of them, we never really talk about fame. We just talk about what do we need to do to be successful. Because again, I don't think fame is the destination; it's an
Yeah.
accolade,
Right.
and
I
it's a
love that you say
reward.
that. It's an accolade, right?
Yeah, it's a reward for being successful. There's nobody that I know that's famous that really is. You can be infamous, but you can't really be famous without some level of success. And the more, when you merge and you marriage art and commerce together, and your art is, you can continue to produce, quality art,
Yeah.
whatever form it is, whether it's film, music, television,
Right.
whatever, then you have a better chance to sustain your fame. But you also, with the understanding that also none of those people took the same path, and none of them have been famous throughout their whole career in terms of maintaining what could be for token purposes that fit their 15 minutes. They've dipped. Some of them have gotten it back. Some of them have never gotten it back. But not anyone that I know has sustained fame, the same level of fame throughout, say, a 20-year career.
There used to be, I don't know if there still is, but I've seen it waning or going away. I know. I remember being trained in school too, and we just always have the mindset that there was a farm system that you would do this and you would create this, or you would work hard at this, be noticed, recognized, maybe rewarded for it, and then promoted to the next thing. And then you'd work hard at that, and hopefully you'd be promoted and moved over here, and that you would earn it. It's a farm system of reward based on your effort, your excellence, your striving for great work, and your passion for it all, as opposed to just maybe doing something that gets noticed overnight and all of a sudden, bam, you're a quote unquote star. That there was a farm system that you worked towards it. Is that farm system still there, or is it all about trying to get the views and all of that and getting it quick? And you know what I mean? Is the farm
Well, I
system
think
still
I do think I feel sad. I feel a little bit sad for younger artists today because our the attention span of our audiences has been truncated enormously. Nowadays, when I came up in the business and not even like 10 years ago, I mean, say 10 or 12 years ago, music, a track on a radio station could be 3.5 to 4 minutes long.
Yeah, yeah,
Now on Spotify and Apple Music, it's like under 3 minutes.
yeah.
So artists are getting less time to actually develop their brand identity. Because if you only can be heard for that amount of time, so that means if your whole song is only 3 minutes, these people that decide who gets on a playlist, they're only listening to maybe 30 seconds.
That's
If
right.
they don't think your song is good, if the hook is not in the song in 30 seconds, they may not even finish the 2 minute song. And then you have all the social media, whether you're on Instagram, TikTok, you have roughly between 18 and 30 something seconds. They tell you basically if you do more than 30 seconds, it's unlikely that. I think on Instagram, they'll give you a minute on my stories, but they really recommend that you keep it 30 seconds or less.
Yeah.
So so visually, even though we're more visually than audio impacted now, but it's very short time frame. And so that makes it very difficult to really create a brand that can be impactful. So you have to be a great performer. You've got to have other things besides your followers to drive and to keep your brand alive.
Yeah, I mean, you used to listen to a 12-inch extended LP and hear how they would mix it up and add different instruments and all, and you'd be getting into the rhythm. I love listening to 70s music, and especially songs that do go 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes, where they're just, I mean, the rhythms, the jams, it's just unbelievable. The orchestration and just everything that's happening. And when it ends, it didn't even feel like it was 7 minutes. You want more because you just got swept up and immersed in it and it took you away. And it's like we almost don't have time for that now.
You can do it as a live if you can get enough traction to be able to get booked and do live concerts. I think live concerts are still a main line to recording success or artistic success, brand success, because you can stretch your music out and do those songs. You can do extended versions of songs that are hits, even though people do like to hear the hit, but you can get creative and you can do a lot of things live that you can't do or a streaming network, like Spotify or Apple Music. So I think, being a live performer is still a good live performer is still your best way to gain success and longevity in our business.
Now, when you came in, I mean, you broke into a business managing famous people at a time when, maybe there were some career challenges as a Black professional in what was predominantly a white dominated industry. Tell us about maybe some of the career challenges and how you were able to work through all that.
Well, again, that's something that I think I learned at Motown too. Just the fact that, working, I never thought that I was incapable of representing any artist. But when you're black and there weren't a lot of people before me that I could look to and say, okay, well, they did this, they did that. I was part of a generation where, for the first time, record companies were having Black music divisions. So I had peers that were, we were all going through the same situation, but to build that trust and to be able to get uh, one, again, it all comes back to success. When a Black artist reaches a certain level where they have success as an R&B artist, and then they cross over, then their opportunities enhance. They get more money, they get more marketing dollars, they get more opportunities to possibly get endorsements. And everything comes down to mainstream success. And so for someone behind the scenes like me, as a manager, even as a publicist, my goal was to try to earn my chops and to try to convince people that I could represent anyone, meaning mainstream artists. And one of the artists that was most influential in helping me do that was Bette Midler, because she was a huge artist when I started working with her. And I worked with her through The Rose and, through a very pivotal point in her career. And I was part of that, brain trust that helped her make that crossover into film. And then after she became successful with that film, later, after I left Rogers and Cowan, which was a PR company where I worked with a lot of big people, and started my own company, she came with me, not immediately, but she ultimately said, she came to me, and that really helped to give me credibility that I had when I worked at Rogers and Cowan. I worked with a lot of big white artists at Rogers and Cowan, but would they leave Rogers and Cowan, which was a big white firm, and go with a Black guy who's just starting off as a Black entrepreneur? And so that I learned that wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
But became a caveat, and she did open that door for me so that I could do that. And I always am very thankful to her, because at that time she could have gone with any PR guy in the business. I mean, any big PR. There was at least 12 or 20 other PR companies of major clout that she could have gone to, and she chose me. So I felt very fortunate, to get that endorsement on my skills and talent. And that's all you really want. I mean, it's really, it's really difficult when you have a culture where systemic racism and inequities exist. You can't expect any one industry to cure that.
Right.
And so the record, in all fairness to the record industry or the entertainment industry, they're no worse than a lot of the other, industries that have kept Black people from being treated equally and given the fair shake. And that's still, unfortunately, that's still something that we're dealing with in our society. And as a result, it's still something that is still very prevalent in the entertainment industry as well.
Before you becoming the talent manager, you mentioned being involved as a publicist. Tell us about some of the challenges maybe of each job, and why did you decide to make that transition?
Being a publicist, I always felt, at one time I was going to write a book about being a publicist, and I was going to call it Last On and First to Go. Because I think when a lot of people come to publicists, they come with a package that may have a lot of flaws to it.
Yeah.
In terms of their branding elements, the music sucks, the image sucks, they haven't planned out the timing, like they came to us too late. And then they want you to be a miracle worker or a mop, you have to mop up the mess. And so, and really PR is free advertising. What you're doing is you're asking publications and television shows and to, interview your clients. But there's no exchange of money for the most part. In fact, for the bigger shows, they actually pay artists, not a lot of money, but they pay them to come on, or they'll pay for their bands to come on. So it's a free enterprise in the sense that your clients pay you to get them publicity, but they're paying you to get what we consider free advertisement. And if you want to equate, like if you got a spread in the New York Times Sunday magazine, what would it cost if you paid for that, which could be, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you get a 4-page spread in a Sunday New York Times, magazine, that's a huge, to pay for that would be exorbitant. But I like, I think the thing with PR is anything when you're winning, you can find some joy in that. And so when you set a strategic campaign together, and it's creative and it's different, and people are reacting to it, that's gratifying, and it builds trust between you and your clients, and you can use that as part of your resume to attract other clients. And that's what, my job as a publicist was to kind of think out of the box and try to do things that hadn't been done before, so that I could set my artists apart from the rest, give them whatever edge so they could be a little bit ahead of the curve. The difference in management, and the reason why I shifted, was because I was getting frustrated with the idea that I couldn't really grow. There's a static fee that you get with being a publicist. It's usually a monthly retainer fee. And I thought, if I was a manager, managers work on commission. You have to produce, but at the same time, you have a position of equity with that artist, so that if they're more successful, you benefit more financially from the relationship. So I was willing to take that risk. But I also thought that with my skill set, that I would be able to see a project through from the original curation of how are we going to, what kind of record are we going to do? What's the image going to be? When's the best timing to do it? How do we support it with the tour? And I thought that could be a better orchestrator and take a project from, the genesis of it, and then see it all the way to the sell-through. And that to me was a bigger challenge, but also more rewarding, when the payoff is that it actually moves the needle, and it helps them to be more successful, and, to reach a level where they can leverage their commercial success for more fame or better deals, more income, all those things that come when you're successful in our business.
You've had an opportunity to work with some of the great names in the industry, Ramon. In the Fame Game, in the book, you talk about your trademark style. Now, I would imagine sometimes, being a manager, even being a publicist, sometimes you're also a psychologist, a therapist, a shoulder to cry on, managing celebrities with a talent for sometimes creating a little drama. How did you develop your unique calming approach? And maybe you can share an example of how it worked in the time of crisis.
I think that my instinctual behavior is to try to be a problem solver. And a lot of, we're dealing in a business where there's a high threshold of ego, and you have to be able to circumvent that, and you have to be able to sublimate your ego. I think that's one of the biggest things for anyone that wants to be in management, or even being a publicist. It's not your career, it's their career. So you have to understand that first. It's almost that old adage, the customer's always right. Well, in our business, the artist is usually always right, but you have to be able to have the guts to stand up and at least let an artist know that you don't agree with something, but you'll still do it if that's what they want to do, because it is their career, and I tried to build a trust by results. If you can produce results and you give them explanations of why you think something can work, and they buy into it, that's a big, we're all being tested all the time on our success rate. So the more we're successful, the more they're going to trust you. And that comes, they're looking for people that are going to give them input that's going to be constructive. And they don't like to be told that they're wrong. But I think it's better for the relationship, the health of the relationship, if they know that you're not afraid to say they're wrong, but that you still are. I'm in the service business. I've always been, whether I was a publicist or a manager, and you have to remember that's the hat that you're wearing. you're being paid, you're making money because you're providing services to them. So that's something that dynamic never changes. It doesn't matter how successful you make them, you're still on their payroll as someone that is providing a service to you. So if they don't think, or someone gets in their ear and they say, hey, this guy's, you could do better, or this advice is not good advice, or whatever, you're always expendable. But I
Right.
think where I've been fortunate, in I'd say one of the things I'm most known for was the crisis of being handed over, dealing with Vanessa Williams when she uh, uh, suffered. A lot of people thought she had a career, but she didn't really have a career. She was the winner of the Miss America.
Miss New York too. New York
Yes,
first, and
she
then
won Miss New York, but that really didn't make her quote unquote famous.
right.
In New York, she earned a little bit of fame. In the book, I would say she got maybe less than 5 minutes for winning Miss New York. And then when she was finally announced in Miss America, she became famous for two reasons. One, she won. And all that happens in I think from the time that Gary Collins says, and the new Miss America, it's like literally I timed it. I watched the actual video. It's less than 2 minutes. So about a minute and 50 seconds, I think I timed it out, to where he says that she's Miss America and the winner of Miss America, and then she was the first Black in the 63-year history. So that put her on a different threshold of a pedestal than other Miss Americas because she was Black. And then these pictures were coming out, and that put her on another wheelhouse in a different direction, going in the opposite direction. And this all happened in a 10-month span. And my job, the way that I first met her was that I was brought in to deal with the reality that the pageant had seen the pictures, and Albert Marks, who was the CEO of the pageant, had given her 72 hours to resign.
Yeah.
And I became the calming force of, okay, here's how we're going to deal with that 72 hours. And that's how I met her. And I was based in LA at the time. I put together a press conference in New York. I convinced her handler at the time, a guy named Dennis Dowdell, this is what we need to do. We're going to do a press conference in New York at the end of the 72 hours. And she's going to make a public statement. I don't know what she's going to say, if she's going to fight for, or she's going to resign, or I don't need to know that right now, but I need to put the press conference together today on a Friday afternoon from LA. I hired a associate friend of mine in New York. So we put the press conference together for 11 o'clock at the Sheraton Hotel on 7th Avenue.
Yeah.
And then we were off and running. And then I took a red eye into New York that night and
Is that
arrived.
around 1984-ish or so?
Yeah, this is July 1984, and I arrived in New York. This guy Dennis picked me up at the JFK, took me to her house, which was in Millwood. She was raised in Millwood, California, Millwood, New York, in Westchester County, and there was an encampment of over 450 press outside, on her lawn, at the edge of her lawn, across the street. It was a zoo. I had no idea the story was as big as it was, but my job was to put together and use her voice to create the statement and put together this press conference. And in the book, I explained that things didn't go exactly as I planned, but that was a big step for her to move on with her life and then to pursue a career in the entertainment business, which is what she wanted to do. So that's one example of, when you're giving. To me, that's a real crisis. If you're only given 72 hours and you have to come up with a planned response that's going to really set her on her journey for the rest of her life. And so that was my challenge, and that's how I first met her. So that's one example of that.
Also working with, I'm friends with Rain Pryor and Richard Pryor Jr. They're dear people, but you had an opportunity to work with their father, with Richard Pryor. Tell us about that. I mean, obviously a brilliant talent, an extraordinarily funny man, but of course the dangers of addiction and self-destruction can sabotage fame. Tell us of fame. Tell us about, working with Richard and trying to help him along.
I think Richard had me to be his consigliatory, counselor. I think he knew he was going to make mistakes, and he wanted to limit the collateral damage. And I think he hired me because he trusted that I would make the best out of his messes. Because he was very unpredictable, but he did make, he would do things that were very unpredictable, and you just never knew. He was not he was a very smart guy. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy was really smart. He's clever. I mean, in fact, I look at his career, and when you dissect it, he's brilliant in a way, not only because he was just a brilliant comic, but he found a way to market his failings, his flaws, in a way in which it became a movie. Like I was involved in the first Richard Pryor Live in Concert, and I helped to put that together. And in each of his concert films, he dissected his own flaws and the things that had been publicized, things that he had done. And Richard Pryor Live in Concert, his first one, he had been in an argument with his first wife, Deborah Pryor, and she tried to leave the house, and he shot the tires off the out of the flat off the Mercedes, and then you know, he used that in his comedy,
Right.
and he did this repeatedly. And if you really studied his evolution as a comedian and entertainer, he did an album, he did a live concert tour, and a film, and he repeated that several times. And in each of those projects, he chronicled all his mistakes, even when he and I didn't work with him on on the last one, but the last one when he almost blew himself up,
Yes.
and
Right.
caught on fire.
Yeah.
He did a joke about that at the end of that show. Um, so he was very vulnerable. He was one of the most vulnerable people that I ever had an opportunity to uh, work with and collaborate with. But I just felt that he could have been much more. But he did so many first. I mean, he was the highest paid, the first black actor to get over $1 million. He just one after another. If you read the book, it's just tons of first.
Yeah.
So his Achilles heel was though his addictions and his inability to stay. He was his own worst enemy,
Yeah.
and so that was but some that's the I think that's you everyone could learn from watching someone like that and how he handled it. And then you had other people that I handled, like Rick James, who was really obsessed with fame, and he had another form of Achilles heel. He had a different problem. Richard really wanted to be successful, but I don't think that he was driven by fame in the same way that Rick was. And Rick was really obsessed with fame, and he had a hard time dealing with being irrelevant or when he wasn't famous. And when those times happened, he resorted to things that really didn't help him. And then, when he became after his career had really, he had gone to prison and he wasn't really doing well. Dave Chappelle renewed interest in his career, and put him on his, the Chappelle skits and everything. And then he started to believe that he could become famous again. And as soon as he got the whiff of that, he started to repeat some of his old behavior with drugs and everything. And then he ended up, he overdosed. Whether he did it I don't think he did it on purpose, but
Yeah.
his body couldn't withstand
Right.
the amount of pressure he put on it at
Such a
that time
talent
in his life.
too.
But
Yeah.
yeah, there again, a very, very talented guy. I mean, one of the most
Lots of
prolific
hits.
songwriter producers, created his own sound, the Mary Jane Girls. He worked with the Temptations. I mean, he was
Yeah.
really, and he was a really great live performer. He was very, very successful. He gave Prince, his break in the business. I mean, Prince opened for him. Rick gave him his first major break as a touring artist. And then
Wow.
they hated each other. They ended up
And then
hating
they,
each other.
it's amazing. You also worked with the Bee Gees too, huh?
Yes, I worked with the Bee Gees as well, and that was another kind of crisis situation that I had to deal with because they were accused of stealing. And I was the only black executive. I worked with them at Rogers and Cowan, and some of the famous people I worked at. When I worked with them, I was a burgeoning publicist. I ended up being a vice president at that company, but at the time that I represented Bee Gees, I had only been there for a little while, and Jet magazine ran a cover story of them with the OJs. It was a shared cover, and Jet accused the Bee Gees of stealing, R&B music and using it and not taking money out of the hands of black artists. Which it wasn't accurate because what they were really known for was disco music, not R&B music. But disco music was a fusion of R&B music, of pop music, and dance music. And Arif Mardin was the guy who helped them restructure a more poppy sound to make it more disco. They didn't create disco. They weren't the first ones to be the most successful at it, but they ended up being the biggest stars from it. I mean, even bigger than Donna Summer. A lot of other stars were really big stars from disco. But the week that this happened, this cover ran, they had 5 songs in the top 5. And when they heard about that, I didn't even know about that it happened. And my boss at the time, Paul Block, said, "Hey, Ramon, did you see this article in Jet Magazine?" So I said, "No, I did not see it." He said, "Well, the Bee Gees are really pissed off about it, and they want to know what you think they should do." And at the time, I said, "Well, there's a number of ways that we could handle this. One, we could ignore it because Jet Magazine is a black tabloid, and I don't think that most of their audience even is aware that Jet Magazine exists. So if it starts to, blossom or mushroom into something bigger, then we could deal with it." And then I also said we could try a retraction, but at that time, a retraction in Jet Magazine would be like 2 sentences, and nobody would ever find it. They buried their retractions. And then the other thing was to do something a little bit more philanthropic and go above the fray. Don't really address the issue, but do something that would platform them in a bigger way. And I said, what if we teamed them with Coretta Scott King, who was one of the leading, civil rights leaders at the time. She was building the Martin Luther King Center for Social Change. And I said, if we did that and we had them donate a concert and we created this partnership, it would put them above, it would put them in a different light with the black community beyond what the Jet was trying to do. And that's what the Bee Gees said they wanted to do. But you'll find out in the book that it didn't really materialize in the way that I thought it would. But it was a great idea, and again, you work with every. I think sometimes in our business, your failures or the thing you learn as much from your failures as you do from success. And so the fact that to me, I failed in that mission of the ultimate goal wasn't achieved, but I learned a lesson. I learned some key lessons in that. Uh, that helped me later on in my career of how to structure a relationship like that, even though it's philanthropic. And that, basically all kinds of relationships in the entertainment business, a contract is essential. And people make so many mistakes because they get aligned with
Yeah.
situations where they're not protected legally,
Right. They
and
do a
then they have no
handshake or
recourse.
verbal, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whether it's with your friends or people that you think you trust, if you don't have it on paper, then it's not legit,
It's not
and you
real.
have no recourse if they steal your money or whatever.
That's
You
right.
have no way to go to court. You can't fight for yourself. It's contracts are
Essential.
They're
See,
essential
that's the
because
lawyer in you.
yeah, and then the thing is, usually you sign these contracts and then you put them away. No one ever looks at them until shit hits the fan.
Right.
People
They
are
don't
going,
read.
"What's that
Right.
contract? Where's my
Right.
rights? What's my rights? What's
Yeah.
my rights?
Yeah.
What
Where's
can they
that
do?
lease?
Can he
Where's
do
that
that?
lease?
Can they do this?" And then that's when you find out. Oh wow, we messed up. We didn't get the right contract, or
We
we
didn't
don't
get
have
the
the
right
rights
one.
we thought we had.
You also worked with Lionel Richie and the Commodores too, huh?
Yeah, I worked with them in the very beginning. They were one of the upstart groups at Motown when I first started. And I got in trouble because I was I was assigned to dealing with black press. And because I think I mentioned this earlier, I didn't realize it, but I found out in pitching the Commodores because I was thinking, how can I elevate my position within Motown? And I said, I'm not going to get any major boost if I just get them in the LA Sentinel or the Chicago Defender. I need to do something that'll shake some heads. So I
Yeah.
said, I need to get them in a magazine like Time Magazine or Newsweek. And if I could get them in that, then people would see that I have more potential. And so I called the guy, the music writer at the time at Newsweek, and I pitched him on the Commodores. They had a couple of big hits at that time. And at that time, Lionel Richie wasn't even the lead singer. The drummer, Walter Orange, was the lead singer. And but they had a couple of hits under their belt, and they were they had they were growing. They hadn't really crossed over, but they were starting to. And so when I pitched this guy, he goes, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "Well, I gave him my name. I said I'm a publicist at Motown." And he says, "Well, Mike Roskin deals with me." I said, "Oh, well, I didn't know that, but I'm calling you. Are you interested?" And I gave him a pitch and everything. He said, "Well, I need to talk to. I'll get back to you. I need to talk to Mike." So I found out that he called Mike Roskin and told him that this young kid had called him and had broken the like I wasn't supposed to call him, and no one told me that. So my boss, who didn't have permission either to call, and I didn't know that either. He brings me into his office. Goes, "Ramon, did you call Newsweek magazine? What the hell are you doing? I don't even have the right to call Newsweek
Right.
magazine. You're in trouble. You need to go. Now Roskin wants to see you. He wants to meet with you." And I said, "I don't know he may fire you. And there's nothing I can do because you didn't even tell me you were going to do it." I said, "Hey, well, nobody told me I couldn't do it. So, hey, if I get fired, then fine. It's not your fault. It's my fault. I'll take the hit. So I went up and I met with Roskin, and he says, "Well, we have some rules that you have to follow." And I explained, "I didn't know these rules, and I'm sorry that I broke them. But now that I know that I'm not allowed to call, blah blah blah." And so I got a hand slap, but I didn't get fired. Eventually ended up. I got laid off from Motown. That's how I got the job at Motown. I mean at Rogers and Cowan,
Right.
and that's how I ended up working with Paul McCartney because I was asked. The
Yes.
first assignment I got at Rogers and Cowan was to write up a publicity kit for a Buddy Holly week that Paul McCartney was planning in England because he owned the Buddy Holly catalog. And I put together all this stuff, and it was based on the delivery of that Rogers and Cowan ended up offering me a job. So I always owe that to Paul McCartney because he gave the blessing on the materials that I wrote and really liked it.
Wow.
And that was the door opener for me at that company.
Wow. Did you ever get a chance to tell him that? Does he know that or no?
I the guy that really is most responsible. He had been at Rogers and Cowan for a few years, and my counterpart in New York was a guy named Joe Dara. So Joe Dara was really friends with Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And I just got it through the grapevine that he was happy, he liked your work, blah, blah, blah. But no, Paul McCartney didn't call me. In fact, I met Paul McCartney's father-in-law and Linda McCartney before I met Paul McCartney.
Mm.
They were doing some stuff. He had an enormous catalog called was it NPM? It's big. He owned like tons and tons of publishing. MPL Communications. That was the
MPL.
name of his, huge publishing company. But I I got to meet him and talk to him later, and I also managed Hamish Stewart, who was the lead singer of Average White Band, and Hamish worked with Paul in Wings,
That's
and
right.
so I went to a few dates and I got to talk. That's actually that was years. That was years later. I got to talk to him longer then than I did when I actually, was his publicist on the West Coast.
You also worked with the greatest, Muhammad Ali. What was that like, huh?
Well, Muhammad Ali, I worked, he never hired me personally, but I worked on projects that he endorsed that I had to work with him on. And there was two projects. One was his lifetime personal photographer was a guy named Howard Bingham. And Howard Bingham and I were friends, and Howard was running for an assembly seat in Los Angeles. And he told me, he goes, Ramon, Muhammad Ali has said that he will support an event um, that for me in support of my campaign, but I don't know anything what to do. And I told him that I want to hire you to do it, and would he be willing to work with you? And so that's how I ended up. That was my first real association. So I ended up producing an event for Howard Bingham, where it was an exhibition fight, where we got celebrities to do a mock, to fight Muhammad Ali, and we did it at the Olympic Auditorium downtown. And the people were Sammy Davis Jr., Marvin Gaye, Richard Pryor, and Burt Young,
Wow.
who was in Rocky. And
Yeah.
so Muhammad Ali agreed to fight them for a few rounds, and they all came, and it was really fun. It was a really great event, and he really supported him. Unfortunately, Howard didn't win his seat, but it was a great event. I did it with a friend of mine who worked at NBC at the time, a guy by the name of Hamilton Cloud. It was a fun event. And then I worked with him later on a children's international peace movement thing that he agreed to do with this British guy, and I helped out with that as well. But I represented a guy named Matthew Saad Mohammed, and Muhammad Ali used to come to events that I orchestrated for different clients. And Matthew Saad Mohammed was a guy, and then they were, and he was endorsed by. Oh, we worked with uh, a gene company. They were big sponsors of a lot of boxing events, and I would get Muhammad Ali to come to some of those events that they. Um, I forgot the name of their company. They were French guys, I think. But he came to a lot of those events, and I've got pictures of us together and stuff. He was just and I had to lie to him once when Richard Pryor canceled a celebrity race.
Oh, did you? What did you tell him happened?
Well, I told him that he came down with a stomach flu, which wasn't really the case, but it was, but I had to go out to, it was for, he had the Muhammad Ali Invitational track meet that he founded. It was at the Long Beach Auditorium, or Long Beach track at Long Beach University. And Richard was supposed to run a 40-yard dash. And on the day of the event, like within hours of the event, he canceled.
Yeah.
And after I'd been to
Your
his
phone
camp,
rang.
yes, at the phone call in his own house, I answered a call from Richard in his own house where he's canceling on the phone to me in his den. So those are the kinds of things I dealt with Richard Pryor.
You've had to think quickly once again. But
But no, that actually I had no choice. I could say
yes,
no, but he said I want you to go down there and tell him I can't do it.
can't do it.
I
Yeah.
said, at first I said I can call,
Yeah.
I'll try to find him. But then he said, no, I want you to actually go down
Actually
there and do
go
that.
and explain the
He made me
situation.
go with his bodyguard at the time. We had to go down there and do it. So
You also work with the Jacksons too, huh?
yeah, I worked with them. The first album off of Motown called Destiny. And the reason why it was called the Jacksons is because again, in contracts, they found out that their father found out that they didn't have the rights to the Jackson Five. They didn't own their name. That's why they became the Jacksons, because Motown owned the name the Jackson Five. And so Sony Epic signed them as the Jacksons, and that was with Michael and the only Jackson that wasn't part of that record was Jermaine, because Jermaine was married to Berry Gordy's daughter, and Barry convinced Jermaine that he could make him a superstar on his own, so he didn't leave with his brothers, and he continued to have a solo career at Motown.
That's cool. There's so many incredible people. You mentioned Marvin Gaye earlier also.
Yeah, Marvin Gaye, again, he was someone that I peripherally got to work on at Motown on his projects, but my best recollection of Marvin Gaye and the longest I ever spoke to him was at a Rick James party.
Mm.
And
that must have been some party.
He knew who I was, and I had met him a couple of times, but again, he was on that upper tier when I started off at Motown. I wasn't given complete access to.
Yeah.
But we talked. I asked him some questions about "Hear My Dear," which was the last album. It was a double album that he did on Motown.
Yeah.
And I asked him why. It was when he was going through the divorce. He was another person that was attached to someone in the Gordy family.
Yeah.
And we talked for over a half an hour, 40 minutes, and he explained to me his logic behind why he did that album. And it was more cathartic for him to just, let his feelings. And a lot of people didn't really respond to the record initially, but it did still end up getting platinum.
It's incredible. It really is. Diana Ross is another you had an opportunity to work with, huh?
Yeah, again, she was on that upper tier. I worked with her several times in my career. She hired Andre Crouch, who was a gospel artist that I managed, and she hired him. So I worked with her on other projects, but really at Motown, I helped to get press to. I remember the first time that I met her. She actually said I was cute, and she says, "Where have you been hiding?" I said, "Well, I'm just a worker bee. I'm in the publicity department." That was like the first time that I met her at an after party at a Universal Amphitheater. But she was nice.
Also, Tina Turner too, huh?
Tina Turner, I met her. I worked with her at one of her downtimes. It was after she had left Ike, and she couldn't get arrested. I mean, she was a guy named what was his name? He was a big publishing guy at Sony, and he was the one that was instrumental in helping Michael Jackson get the catalog from Paul McCartney.
Oh yeah, remember that? Yeah.
But yeah, I did a few things with her. I had a very short-lived experience with Tina Turner, but I was really happy for her when the person that really had the most influence on her career was Roger Davies, the English manager. He really changed around and broke her in England, actually. But when I worked with her, she was still struggling to get a record deal and to make it as a solo artist. And she had been struggling for a couple of years, a few years in that, where she really wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
But Roger really, turned her. I was one of the biggest turnarounds, and she wasn't that young then. So what he was able to do for her, I've always respected as one of the great jobs I've seen by any manager in our business.
Do you see a thread with all these people? Is it that it factor that they have? What is it about these folks who, one of the keys to all these industries, whether it's music, television, film, stage, the arts, anything, sports, is to make everything look so smooth and easy and effortless. So that way they're the consumers of the material, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the entertainment or whatever it is, the information. But there's a lot of, obviously, blood, sweat, and tears and hours and strife and sacrifice that goes into all of it, and a lot of emotion that goes into it. And you're in the thick of it. You see all of it as it's happening, and you're working to put those puzzle pieces together. Do do you see a thread with everybody? Is it, yeah, got to have that it factor they always talk about?
I don't think everybody obviously has the it factor. Um, but I do think that some of I've been very blessed in the sense that I think that I've worked with a lot of really, really talented artists who um, dedicated their lives to, their craft and their art form to be the best that they could be at it. And the people like Marvin Gaye. I mean, these are seminal figures. Stevie Wonder, the Jacksons, a lot of the people that you've been pulling up the pictures on. These are people that, it wasn't easy for them, but they spent. And I think that I really do think that that was one of Barry Gordy's true talents. Was he was a great curator of talent. And those that he believed in, he spent the time to make sure that they got the best songs, the best producers. He invested in getting the best people, choreographers, glam squads, um, uh, stage people, to stage them and to really present them and give them a leg up over all the other artists. I mean, I think that that is really, he made sure that his artists were well spoken, and sort of it was almost like going to a university.
Yeah.
He looked at, really building talent and building brand identity. And that's a big part of the difference between that I think has changed in our business is that uh, the idea of branding is not new, but people just didn't use the term as much. But we've, ever since I started, it was about branding, but we just didn't do it. But artists were considered artists, and they did songs and they toured. And today, your what you leverage is more your artistry in the context of a brand than just the process of writing songs and performing. So those are only two parts, and that they're still um, the major conduits that are used for promotion. But your brand has to extend beyond that, so that there's so many synergies and partnerships that are formed that help to really maximize the artist brand, because a lot of the labels are not, they're not spending money, they're not giving you tour support. So when you get your name out there, I mean, most artists, they're making more money from their brand associations than they do from their streaming.
Yeah.
They make a lot of money off live performances and then their brands. I mean,
The
all the different
branding,
names you can think
sponsorships,
of.
and
Yeah, all those are
yeah,
multi-million dollar deals.
like
The
with
record companies,
sports too. Yeah,
yeah,
athletes.
it's the same. It's for anyone that's in the entertainment sphere, that LeBron James, or the most famous athletes that you can think of,
Yeah.
they're making more money off the court or off the field than they are, on, because of their brand ability. And that's
Yeah.
something that you really have to understand if if your goal is to reach the highest heights, uh, and possibly get to that point where that's where I think fame and the amount of fame does impact you, whether you get that
Yeah.
5 minutes, 10 minutes. When even if you get 10 minutes, you're like a journeyman. You get jobs and you get work, but you're not on that. I think we're all, whether we're in the service industry or in your artists, everyone wants the top 10 or top
Right.
5. If you
Right.
can't get the top 5, give me the next top,
Get
or
with the
the
next.
next 10. And we're all being rated all the time. And so to get in that circle of being considered one of the best, that's when you can really leverage, and that's where fame becomes a currency. That's when it can help influence, how much you get paid, how much control you have, creative control you have over your projects. And that's how you use fame as a tool. And
Right.
again, as a reward and an accolade that gives you that access, but it still isn't the destination.
Right. It has to be managed wisely too, right? Because you can easily go off the other track once you get that fame, and it can overwhelm you and eat you up alive if you just focus on the fame. I've had so many people who've come through here and in my professional work, and I've asked them, what would you say to folks who are starting in these industries? who right now are celebrity focused and the thing that they really want. And I've been on TV shoots actually with people who've joined us for the first time, and they're like, all I care about all this is I just want to be famous. And
Right.
we're saying to ourselves, that shouldn't be the reason why you want to do the work and everything else that comes along with it. And a lot of the folks who've come through in the performance realm have said, if the person wants to be a singer, an actor, whatever it may be, if they're only 50% in and the other 50% is they want to be an accountant, because you have to be 100% in and don't do it just chasing fame, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think you can. I have some in the book. I have some tenets of fame, and success and fame don't come with a warranty. So even if you get it, it doesn't mean that it's going to last. And and you never know for sure when you're going to get it, because ultimately, we're all guessing. As a manager or publicist, I'm guessing. The artist is guessing. Whether their music is going to hit or not. Um, because there is no magic potion that we can say that everything you do is going to be successful.
Right.
Um, so because of that, there is no, if the public ultimately decides when you're famous and when you're not. If they get tired of you, it's very difficult. It's like what happened with the Bee Gees, and but the public were influenced by a dying art form, meaning disco, which was hastened by the fact that the record industry didn't want to be attached to disco anymore. And so,
And then they had that stunt at the ballpark, right? Where they
yeah,
burned all the
exactly.
disco records, the radio
Is
stations.
there any other musical form that you can think of in your lifetime where the industry said, we don't want, we don't want to be associated with this music, or where a culture said, okay, we're going to erase a
What
genre of music?
happened from your experience? What do you think really caused that? Why did everybody want to suddenly detach? Because now when people hear it, they're like, I kind of like there's rhythms, the orchestrations, real instruments, the beats. Why did they want all of a sudden, in
For some reason,
1979?
I think there was a artist who became disco artists, and I think part of the reason was because it was popular in the clubs, and in a way, disco bastardized artists because you started doing live to track dates. Clubs don't want to pay to have full concerts. So once you got marked as a disco artist, you couldn't get the extra uh, benefit of doing a theater date and getting the money that you would need for a theater date, because they knew that you were only getting this much money for doing the club dates and stuff. So
Yeah.
it abridged what the traditions of music presentation were about, and people just didn't like. It was a collection of a lot of different types of people, gay, straight, a mix, and I think that was part of it. But yeah, they just pretty much, and again, I've never seen anything like it. But
No.
when you're at the top, you're considered the number one group in the world, and suddenly the public says, "Well, we're not into what you're doing anymore." It wasn't
Mm.
because the Bee Gees lost their talents or whatever, but when you reach the apex of what you can accomplish as a group, and then they say that the music that you've done, and you have to go back to the drawing board and come up with another sound.
Because it becomes ridiculed and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gave them a really bad label, and they never really recovered from that. I mean,
No.
Gary ended up writing for a lot of, he's written a lot of hits since then.
For
Robin
others.
had a career after that. Maurice died, but
Yeah.
the group was never after that fall of disco. They
That
never
whole thing
gained that level of fame,
for a
and
lot
that
of
was the
artists.
third time around.
Yeah.
So it just
I know.
shows that um, you just can't really predict how long it's going to last, and that's why I think what you were suggesting or inferring is
Yeah.
when you're not really into the art form, because you're going to have to absorb failure
Yeah.
at some point in your career. And the question is, if all you wanted was fame and you really didn't prepare yourself for either having to reinvent yourself or
Yeah.
modifications in what you're doing to continue to grow in your art form so that you could still, be relevant, and all you were about was the fame, then you've really lost it.
And you say too, also in the book, that there isn't necessarily one specific path to fame, right?
No, there isn't. I didn't meet. I've worked with hundreds of artists, and I can honestly say that I don't think there's a congruence that is shared by any two artists that I worked with. They all had something different, and that's what I tried to portray in the book, is to give people a little bit of history. We'll look at the path that these people took, and then it's kind of a hybrid. So I'm giving that, and then I'm also showing where I was at that point, and the juxtaposition of my skill set and how I influenced or helped to maybe move the needle, based on where they were at that time. But each and every one of the people, they all had a different path.
And you worked, as I mentioned, with stars in film, comedy, music. Does achieving fame in each segment of the arts have its own set of challenges from your experience?
Oh yeah, they're different. They're different standards, and they've changed a long time ago. At one time, for example, you couldn't, if you were a Broadway star, it was unlikely that you were going to get access to film and TV. And then if you were a film and TV star, you wouldn't have access to Broadway. So there's been a lot of, and artists, music artists, a lot of people didn't want to give music artists access to either. But there's, now with the more branding concept of artists, you're seeing that's broken down. You see people from Broadway going to film and TV. You're seeing people from hip hop and Will Smith or Queen Latifah or Ice Cube. I mean, there's tons of hip hop artists that have become big TV stars and movie stars. So there is a breaking, that stuffiness that existed in our industry has been, I think, broken down. I don't think it's definitely not as prevalent. And the more, I think, again, in building a successful brand so that you can move from one medium to another is the best way to sustain a long career. When one area possibly dries up, you have that latitude to go to another genre where you could thrive in, if you have the talent, if you have that, the skill set.
You also, of course, worked with the incomparable Quincy Jones. I mean, what's that experience like?
I met Quincy at a time in his career where um, he had just had an, he was recovering from his operation, and he's just a great. I love Quincy. He's been a huge
Yeah.
influence in my life, and I try to portray that in the book. I met him on The Wiz. I was hired to represent the soundtrack for The Wiz, and I agreed to do it if I could get someone to help promote it. And I said, like, I don't know if I can get, because Diana Ross was in that, Michael Jackson was in that, and MTA had the record. And the publicist who hired me I said, can you get any of these artists to support the record, or am I going to be stuck with trying to promote this through air?
Yeah.
Or would Quincy do it? And she said, look, I can't guarantee I can get you any artist, but Quincy wants to do this. He knows who you are. He wants to meet with you, and he said that he'll. So that was my first gig with him, where I was, and he was very supportive of the project. And he didn't do everything, but I put to, he told me he had a certain amount of time to do certain things, and I put together a target list of things that I thought, look, I'm not expecting you to do 100 things. If you could do these, I gave him a list of I think I had maybe 15 things. If you could do these 15 things, we're going to get this much reach. And, and that's part of your job as a publicist, is to, work within the framework of the time that you're given, and to utilize it strategically in a way in which it can be most effective. And so he was a great collaborator in supporting my efforts, and in supporting, he wanted the soundtrack to be successful.
There's another project you worked on. I think that it was near and dear to your heart. Is it R&B Live?
Yes, R&B Live.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell
that
us
was
about that. That was something I know you're very proud of.
Yeah, I'm. That's one of my. I'm proud, and I also think it's one of my biggest failures, to be honest. Not because of the what we accomplished.
Yeah.
We did something that had never been done before,
Right. Exactly.
and the key to it was that it was at a time when hip hop music was starting to take over the business. And a lot of the musician friends that I had were saying, they're not getting gigs anymore because, everything was being stripped down. They were doing, you know, uh, DJs were more popular. A lot of stuff was being done on computers,
Yep.
in the recording. And
Auto
so
tune
there
and
was the R&B music was stagnating to some degree, and I wanted to create a place where it could be fertile ground for to continue the livelihood of artists and people where they could just go and appreciate great live music, great live R&B music.
it's
And so
cool.
that was really the mission behind it. And it was a weekly club that we put on and off for uh, 5 years. It started the night of the Gulf War, January 16, 1991. And, Stevie Wonder performed, Lenny Kravitz, Prince. I mean, over the course of the 5 years, I think we booked 260 artists. I started with a guy named Bill Hammond, who was my partner. And the key to it was we took over a place called Tramps in the Beverly Center, which was a popular UK night spot. And this guy, Italian guy, licensed the rights to use the name in the States. But the key was I never told people who was performing. And one of the reasons I did that was because I was a manager and I knew that if we advertised who was performing, my manager friends would want their artists to be paid.
Yeah.
And I couldn't afford to pay them. So my goal was to make this a marketing concept initially to get artists to come out that and make it as kind of like a workshop so that I could turn it into a supper club franchise where places in New York, LA, um, London, and Japan. And then I wanted to take the artists and route them in each of those foreign markets so I could have a touring cycle on an annual basis at the places.
Wow.
So I spent more money than I had hoped to, but
Yeah.
more people have told me, that they loved that and it was the night they came there was the greatest night of their life. And
Yeah.
so it was really something I'm really proud of in terms of doing something different that was revolutionary and made a big impact in the industry. But I was sad and disappointed that I wasn't able to realize the full, bigger vision of it.
Yeah. Yeah. But you gave it a shot, which is the key. And that's something it's like a running theme in your life. You don't give in or give up. You're very passionate about what you do. Somebody that was passionate about what she did, who is no longer with us, and we miss her dearly, was you worked with Natalie Cole, huh?
Yeah, I worked with Natalie through some good times and bad times.
Yeah.
Another great talent and really gifted singer, performer, who, had some troubled times. And fortunately, before she passed, she did overcome those.
Yeah. Right.
And I was very happy. And I can remember running into her at an event after not seeing her for a while after I had represented her. And she came up to me. She goes, Ramon, I know I put you through hell. And I'm so sorry. You know, we had a nice moment. But, it's great when you see artists who go through different times and, you know, uh, down times and they're able to recover and reclaim themselves and who they are. And that's really, I said, hey, don't worry about it. I'm happy to see you got your life back together and you're doing
Yeah.
well. And
Yeah.
I always root for any of my clients, whether I ended working with them or not. I appreciate the time we had together, and I usually still root for them, from afar.
Another one that we lost, and spectacular talent. And every time I hear "Dance with My Father," that's such a beautiful song. Luther Vandross.
Yeah, Luther is another one of the greatest voices of all time in my mind, particularly as an R&B artist. And I got to work with him because I was working at a management company. The only management company I ever worked at, other than my own, was with Shep Gordon, who was the guy that managed Alice Cooper, and
Yeah.
they had they're still together. But Shep took me under his wing, and at the time he had Luther, he had Alice, he had Teddy Pendergrass,
Yeah.
he had the Callaways, he had Gino Vanelli, he had the Gypsy Kings. Yeah, it was a great. I learned a lot from working with Shep and getting a chance to work with Luther. That was around the time of his "Give Me the Reason" album,
Yeah.
and he was going through his weight fluctuations. And
Yeah.
when I first met him, I think he weighed about 350 pounds, and he was doing backup singing for Bette Midler. Actually, I was working with Bette Midler at the time, and I met him, and he used to sing on stage, but it was covered, so you couldn't really see him. He wasn't a featured artist, but he did all the high parts for Bette and the Harlettes. So I kind of explained in the book how we met and everything. But he was a, very talented singer. I mean, his voice is legendary. He was again though an artist who was very successful in the R&B side, but was having trouble crossing over as an artist. He eventually did, but he still was more known to the Black audience than he was to major white audiences.
Still a phenomenal talent all the way around. All of these people we're talking about. Even worked with Daryl Hall and John Oates.
Yeah, worked with those guys too. They were. I worked with them during their Sarah Smile days.
Oh yeah, that's a big time for them.
Yeah, it was a very big time for them, and they didn't like it. You talk about another crisis. They didn't like being called Blue-Eyed Soul.
Right, I remember hearing that.
Yeah, they didn't like that tag.
How did you work through all that?
I just tried to let the media know that they didn't like it. If there's some things that you can't control. If the media wants to say certain things, but I just say, hey, if you're going to interview them, it'd be great if you don't mention. If you want a good interview, don't mention the Blue-Eyed Soul bit because they're not going to respond well to it.
It's not going to be right.
Yeah. And some media people will listen to you and some don't.
Some will not. Right.
Yeah. So if you do that, they're going to turn off. They're not going to, and they actually changed their career after that.
Yeah.
Because they resented it so much that they tried to go totally rock and roll after that.
Yes, I remember.
And those albums did not do as well. And then they switched back to that same sound.
Right.
And then, if you remember, it was "I Can't Go for That" was one of their big songs.
Can't go for that.
And that was their, and they had a very successful run, but their biggest songs were that blend of, and they were, again, it was kind of like with the Bee Gees. They weren't, Daryl Hall was the lead singer.
Yeah.
And he grew up in Philly, and he was a session singer for Gamble and Huff and a lot of stuff. So he learned that's just how he sang.
Right.
So he wasn't trying to be someone, he wasn't trying to be black, but that's how he learned how to sing.
Right.
And he just had a really soulful voice. And, so the idea that they called him Blue-Eyed Soul, I know they didn't like it, but to me, the thing that Daryl has that a lot of, he just has a really texturally soulful voice. And that's what distinguishes him from a lot of, George Michael had this similar quality. Mick Hucknall had that quality. Hamish Stewart had that quality. Tina Marie.
Yeah.
These are people that just have, they just had inherent soul.
Did you work with her? Tina Marie?
I didn't work with her. I never represented her, but I interfaced a lot with her because she was a protege of Rick James. So
right.
And she toured with him on several tours. So and she was actually also a struggling songwriter at Motown when I was there.
The takeaway, I mean, this has been of a 3-year labor of love. One of the hardest things sometimes writers will say is getting started, knowing when to put the first, what to put on the paper first. Some say finishing the book, knowing when to put the last period on the last sentence, and being able to walk away from the book and saying, I'm good, that's it, I'm comfortable, even if you do rewrites and all, just I'm settled, I'm good. And then we had somebody that said for them, the middle of the book was the hard part, combining, sort of linking the beginning and the end, and the middle was hard for them. What was the writing process like for you over that 3-year time of putting this book together? And it's a phenomenal book. Kudos, congratulations, Ramon.
Oh, thank you so much. I think the whole process was hard.
A lot of antacids and headache pills, and
I think for me, no, it's I'm a behind the scenes guy for the most part, so the idea of me using the word I so many times
yeah,
was really, really, really difficult. I was so over myself when I finished this book, like I didn't even want to hear my name again. Then I said, oh, well, you got to go out and promote it. But yeah, that was a huge thing, was just talking about myself and not wanting to feel self-absorbed,
right,
or not to project that I was self-absorbed, because to me, I'm a team player, and everything that I've done has been influenced by other people.
yeah,
There's not an artist or a project that I worked on that I could take full credit for,
yeah,
and on every level, so because you have to work, and when you become a manager, the amount of people that you have to interface with on a
yes,
regular basis, it's inordinate.
it
It's
is,
hundreds of people,
yeah,
so you can't take all the credit when you've got to get all these people in line, and you really, really, when you call yourself an orchestrator, it's like there isn't a magic wand, but you
no,
are trying to orchestrate and keep people's interest and enthusiasm in favor of your artist. So there
right,
is that. But in writing, I think you're just the hardest thing is cheering yourself on to
yeah,
get through that process.
self-starter, yeah,
Yeah, and I think just being disciplined and being able to write every day, I think was the biggest reward for me, and what kept me focused. Where I did have lulls, but I never felt that one part of the book was harder than another part. And I found what I found was most challenging was just testing my memory of stories that I wanted to share, and realizing that I was off.
did you ever keep a journal through the years?
No, most of the book is from memory of
From
things that
memory,
just have
wow,
stayed with me. But then being able to actually Google and go through different little pieces that shaped, that I needed to add authenticity to the story. And
right.
some of those stories I was off by like a year or something, and I had already written past that section. I go, shit, now I got to go back, because and then I would start, reflecting and go, oh, okay, now I remember this and that. And so sometimes it would trigger, and then I remember other aspects of that story that actually were very important and pivotal, that I would have forgotten had I
Mm,
had not missed the time frame. And so I
right,
think that was really what I really wanted to do, was try to give people a passenger seat and make people feel like what they're reading happened in real time in
right,
my life. And so in that way, I just wanted to. Um, that was my challenge as a writer, was to really try to make it as authentic and real as possible. And everything is from my point of view, but it's from, I didn't want it to be mudslinging. I didn't want to make anyone that I worked with feel bad, but I wanted to be honest about the challenges. And one of the things that I focused on a retrospective, or what I call a promar, on my career rather than a memoir, because I didn't feel I was ready for a memoir. But I thought
yeah,
that
right.
again,
I love Promar. Saw that
yeah,
earlier, and I was like, "Wow, how cool is that?"
I love to. I thought that my stories would hopefully be engaging and enlightening, and people would get something from my philosophy on fame, and then how I chose to share the stories so that they could see it in their own eyes, almost be like an eyewitness, and participate in seeing what was going through my mind at certain times, crucial times in my career.
What is the ultimate takeaway that you hope readers get from the book? And this book can really apply to all aspects of life. You don't have to be a major celebrity or even desire to be one to get a lot of really good nuggets of information just about living in life and how to treat people in this book.
Yeah, I think there are ethics in life that help us all do better. And in my book, I think I try to share the things that I think made me better, that I learned from, and that if we, again, you learn from your successes, and you shouldn't. I don't think, to me, my successes, I expect to be successful. So when I'm successful, I'm proud of it, but I don't want to hinge my everything I do on that success, because there's something else around the corner that I'm going to have to be challenged by. And I
Right.
think that that's an important thing, is don't get too full of yourself. And that's an important part about dealing with fame, is if you only deal with the perks and all the privileges, and that's why you want to be famous, you're going to lose those one day, and then what do you have left with? And so that's where your ethics and your work ethic and how you approach failure, and how you don't let fame define you. I think that's really important. And I learned those lessons from several people. Bette Midler was one of the people that, she incurred a lot of she incurred failures in her career, and she didn't let that level of fame define her. She always was willing to go and fight for the next thing. And I think that what I've learned from pretty much every client was this idea that you can't win all the time, but it's how you deal with your failures that really shapes your character and molds, and shapes the way that you face your failures and can turn them into successes. If that you're just as equipped and able to get over failures as you are to deal with successes. And I think that, for young people, I hope that they understand that there is a process of work and earning, that fame is something that you have to earn. It's not gratuitous. It doesn't just come to you. And
Right.
I think that that's a misnomer that social media has given, um, a lot of people, that they feel like, well, if I'm just famous, I can, that's my ticket. I got to be famous. And they don't understand that it just doesn't work that way.
You mentioned something that I think is so cool. Maybe before we wrap, you can mention it. There's something about like, uh, not everybody in the world is meant to get 15 minutes of fame. They're not going to achieve it. You mentioned the percentages earlier, but if you do get the 15%, this is what happens. If you get 10 minutes of fame, it's this. 5 minutes, it's this. Take us through that a little bit. I
Well,
think
the
that's
thing
cool.
was that when I was coming up in the business, the statement, everyone will get 15 minutes of fame, actually came partially from a photographer in Sweden, and Andy Warhol, and it was a conversation that they were having, doing a photo shoot that was in view of the public, and you know they talked to each other, and that's when uh, he said, he came up with the idea, yeah, everyone will get 15 minutes. And when I started in the business, I started to think about that as, well, if it's 15 minutes of fame, what does that really mean? And I kind of use it as a metaphor, that I'll look at talent. I started to look at talent and assess whether I thought they could get 15 minutes of fame, and then look at, or would they be someone that, maybe I think they're not really talented enough, so they may not get a minute, or maybe they're a little bit talented, but they're not star material. They don't have that it factor, so maybe they'll get 50, maybe they'll get 5 minutes, maybe they'll get one hit, but they're
Right.
not sustainable. You
Right.
know, I maybe saw a tape of them perform, and I just go, they need a lot of work. They're not ready yet.
Right.
Then you get 10 minutes where somebody has been around a while, but for whatever reason, they just has never really made it. They're known, they're respected, but they're still not like, they might be a star even, but they're not superstars.
Right.
Then when you get to work with people that really do have the 15 minutes, like a Stevie Wonder, Muhammad Ali, or some of the other people, Bee Gees, and you see what the difference is when those people, what they're able to leverage with that 15 minutes. That's when I say, well, those are the people that I want to be associated with. If I can be associated, why not go for the A people?
Right.
And if I can help sustain 15 minutes, that's going to be easier for me to do than it is to be able to take someone who only has 1 minute,
Yeah.
and that you hope can get 15 minutes.
Right.
And I've worked with all stages of fame, so not everybody that I've worked. And my goal was always, can I help move the needle, even if they only 5 minutes?
Right.
If it's 10 minutes, can I help them move down that path in a positive way? And that's my takeaway in terms of my career. That I look back and I go, well, I'd like to think that everyone that I've come in contact with, that I've been able to move forward in some way, shape, or form. And I feel most of my clients, I think that they would say that that's the case. That I help.
Yeah.
Not every time did I was able to get them 15 minutes, but if you can just continue on that positive path, I think that makes a big difference in every artist's career, is to continue to move forward. And that's, again, it's the same in any business. It's not just partial to entertainers, but I think, if you're a doctor, if you're in real estate, or an actor, Broadway, you just want to continue to move forward and get a chance to express your art form.
Absolutely. Somebody that knew how to do that, who usually pops in towards the latter part of the show. Mr. George Burns is with us.
Yes, God himself.
God himself. He knew about longevity and sticking with it, right? With his cigar and his red pocket square. My aunt collected dolls, so this got passed on to me, to collectible. But he said you knocked it out of the park, and he said you've had at least, and you've earned your 15 minutes of fame, and you are a class act, Ramon. And thank you, George, for popping in to say hello. He said he learned a lot about the business, even though he's one of the legends in it.
I got a chance to meet George.
Did you?
Yeah, I did, really briefly, on a set on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, I think it was.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. I think he made a cameo or something. And
yes, because we had Diane on the show, Steinberg Lewis.
Yeah.
Yes, she was a guest on the show as well, and she is phenomenal. And she was talking about George and the Bee Gees and the whole thing.
Yeah.
You were involved in some of that too?
The Bee Gees were in it, and also Peter Frampton was in it as well.
And so you were involved with them at that time?
I represented both of them when I was at Rogers and Cowan, and we represented the film.
Yeah.
So it was, that was a disaster film, though.
That's what she said. It was.
Yeah, it really didn't do well. A funny story.
But yeah, there's a cult following for it, huh?
Pardon?
There's still like this cult following for it, which is funny. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but at the time, I mean, it was at the premiere was at the Cinerama Dome on Hollywood Boulevard, on Sunset Boulevard. And I remember Gil Friesen, who was he was the CEO of A&M Records, because I used to represent Herb Alpert. And I remember I was in the lobby, kind of walking around waiting for the film to be over. And Gil walked out and he goes, "Man, that film makes me, I'm embarrassed to be in the music industry." As he was walking out, he just said, that film sucked and I'm embarrassed to be in the music industry, because it was so bad. But there were some moments in the film. To me, the best part of the film was Billy Preston.
Yeah. Yes.
He was a really great act. And
I
But yeah,
agree.
it was a struggle behind the scenes because Peter Frampton was the bigger star when they committed to doing the film than the Bee Gees were. And then as the film, came closer to being done, the
Yeah.
Bee Gees ascended higher, and then
Yeah.
Stegwood wanted to change the billing and everything. So it was a big battle between Peter Frampton's camp and the Bee Gees camp because they couldn't really change the contracts, or whatever. But yeah, it was an interesting project to say the
Yeah.
least.
What are some of the blessings and joys in your life, Ramon, that keep you going forward through thick and thin all these years, decades in this incredibly ever-changing, nutty, but phenomenal industry? What are some of those blessings and joys that inspire you to keep going forward?
I think I always try to think of myself as I'm not a person that has a career. I just believe I try to just do things that I'm passionate about, and I've been able to do a lot of things in different areas. Like as you mentioned, I've worked in sports, I've worked in all kinds of music, and I've been a publicist, I've been a manager, I've been an event producer, I've worked on films, and so whatever inspires me, I'm just happy that I still get an opportunity to. I love being creative and I love working with creative people, and I feel blessed that I'm able to do that. And I feel blessed that through the whole thing, I'm grounded. I have a family that I love immensely. I have three beautiful children. I dedicated the book to them.
Yeah, you did.
My ex-wife, Vanessa Williams, and I are still friendly, and we've done a great job of parenting. And at the end of the day, it's your family and your close friends that I think really get you through all the tough times. And I'm very
Yeah,
blessed to have a really close knit family. I'm close to all my kids. They're all healthy, a couple of sisters. So those are the things that I think back on. And I've always had their encouragement and their support and great friends, who some that encouraged me to write the book in the first place, others that have read it and think it's great and they really enjoyed it. So I think you just and just to be positive. There's so many things in life that we can be negative about, and I just try to stay positive and make the best out of all the opportunities that I've been given in the
beautifully
different
said.
capacities. We live in tough times, and
Yeah,
they don't seem to be getting any easier. The pandemic was really tough for a lot of people.
yes,
So you just have to kind of stay focused on, getting the best out of your life. I think that's what I try to
absolutely.
do. Yeah.
We around here we call that levity.
Levity.
That's what
Yeah.
it is.
I'll take some levity anytime.
I was going to say, Jen watching in Pennsylvania says, Ramon, you are now a lovety. So you're in with
Well,
all
thank
those
you. I'm happy to join
fabulous.
your levity crew, and
Yeah.
I think love is a big, I think if you love
Yes,
what you do, you love the people around you. I
absolutely.
agree. That's a really great place to start and stay. And stay in that circle of
Stay in
levity.
that
That's
spot.
important. Yeah.
Exactly. Before we
Yeah.
wrap, tell us about that beautiful room that you're in.
Oh, so this is just my little, my man cave, my office cave. I work from my apartment, so these pictures are of my family and people that have, influenced my life. Um, and as I was writing my book and, leaning back and gazing at different things, you just feel lucky and fortunate for the opportunities. And I always feel comfortable here. It's very relaxing.
Few beautiful discs behind you to your right on the wall.
Yeah, they don't exist anymore. Nobody gets those things. Those are relics. That's from
Yes.
I'm like a dinosaur. I shouldn't even be showing those. But yeah, these are things that used to be like when you used to get those. They meant something. It was a situation of your hard work and being a part of a team. Usually the people that got them were part of a team. So it was always nice. And a lot of times I didn't even know I was going to get them. You're either the label or the artist, would present them to you as a token of gratitude for your hard work, and so I've always treasured them, and Yeah, they're fun to have. I still keep a lot. I have a, I have maybe about 1,000 records. I used to have a bigger collection, but I got tired of toting them around. But I still believe vinyl is the best form of music. The warmth that
Yeah,
a
the
vinyl record
warmth.
has,
Yeah, that analog
it makes a
sound.
difference. So I still listen to great Marvin Gaye records and all that stuff
Yeah,
on vinyl. If I
yeah.
get a chance, I still have a record player. So
Yeah, I do. I still have my Onkyo stereo system and the KLH speakers and the double cassette deck and the whole and climate controlled storage unit that we pay monthly for that has
right,
thousands of CDs and sealed LPs and all kinds of stuff. You
that's
bring that
great.
stuff out, and I love music. I'm still trying to get used to it being, um, in your ear, shoved in the ear. I like my music filling the house. I like it bouncing off the walls. I like it a room filled with the sound versus it being shoved in like iPod earbuds or something.
Right. No,
I'd
I
rather have
agree.
it surrounding me.
I'm not much that much on ear stuff either. I mean, unless I'm really listening to critique
Yeah,
a record or for input, someone's asking me for input. Sometimes I'll put
yeah.
the
In
earphones on
close.
for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, there are some things about the older archaic music industry that I still cherish and love.
That's it. Don't ever lose that vibe either, my friend. You're the
Right.
best, and congratulations on the book. The book available at Amazon and all the usual places people can go to get the books, right?
Yeah, but it's still
Yeah.
pretty fresh. It's only been out since August 16th. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, please, take a read. It's yeah, everywhere. Local bookstores, Barnes and
Yeah.
Nobles, pretty much any digital platform where they sell books, you can get it.
Did you ever think you'd write one?
I it was something that I was contemplating about, and it's that one, it's that leap of faith, and once I put my mind to something, I
Yeah.
think you just have to have that stick to itiveness and the determination it becomes a challenge to test and challenge yourself to complete a task. And so, yeah, it took me a minute to finally say, yeah, do I really want to do this? And what do I really want to say? And then once I got over that hump,
Yeah.
and I said, it was an outline that I started that germinated from a friend of mine who I was dating at the time, and we used to 6:30 every morning would dedicate an hour to crafting the outline. And
Mm,
we did this for 3 weeks every day, and it was after that 3 weeks that I was convinced that I could do it.
wow. That's incredible, huh?
Yeah.
It's incredible. Well, congratulations on it. Really a spectacular read and goes over many years of your experience. And there's great tips in there and so much more. And thanks for all the great time. This was a fantastic conversation. Like I say here at the Jim Master Show, we don't do interviews, these are conversations. And the audience has been commenting and celebrating throughout. And they've had all these wonderful things to say.
Oh,
Many of
good.
them. Many of them are going to be going to get the book if they haven't ordered it already, because they're really fast paced with doing that. Kathleen in New York City says, thank you for being here, Ramon, and take care. And Mary Bishop in Florida, great conversation. Looking forward to reading your book, Ramon, as well. You got double hearts coming in from Jen. And she always asks the guests these questions. She's in Pennsylvania. What's your Zen place, the ocean or the mountains?
Oh, wow. I'd say both. I love to ski, so I'd say the mountains are. I love,
Yeah.
skiing. I'm a late bloomer as far as
Yeah.
skiing goes, but there's just something so the exhilaration of going up a mountain and seeing where you're starting from, and
Right.
then going down that mountain. That's just, I mean, it's one of the most exhilarating sports. I'm a big sports fan, and that's one I love skiing. But I also love the ocean. I mean,
Me too. Yeah.
it's that's another different kind of tranquility and serene qualities that the ocean brings that you don't, you get that a little bit on the mountains, but there is a that ocean and the waves, and it's also a great place to contemplate and think and
Yes.
reflect. Yeah. So
Yeah.
both are very strong. I'd say they're both Zen value. Both are Zen values to me.
Places that are greater than ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, where we can escape. And
Great nature.
absolutely. I hope the show met whatever expectations you had, Ramon, and you enjoyed the time with me as much as I
I did.
absolutely.
You're a great conversationalist. I felt very relaxed and easy. I really appreciate the time.
That's
And
terrific. And as my father has always said, he told us when we were kids, you probably appreciate this being in brand management and more. Whenever anybody tells you something nice, Jim, ask them to please put it in writing and address it management.
that's good. Well, that put it in
That
writing.
holds true, right?
I'm big on that.
Yes. And address
Anyone
that
that's ever worked with
positivity.
me, I go, hey, put it in writing. Send it
Yeah,
to me in writing.
that's
I
right.
don't want to have a conversation. Put
Yeah.
it in writing.
Yeah, all the kind words you get, ask them to put it in writing and address it management.
Yeah, any last parting thought to any artists out there that don't do anything until it's in writing. You don't know how many young artists I've said, did you get it in writing? They go, no. I go, what
Really?
did I tell
No.
you? Put
Yeah.
it in writing. Get it in writing. If you don't have it in
Yeah.
writing, it doesn't exist.
But he's my buddy and all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
I've heard every
for
story.
now until
Yeah.
the money comes in, then he's not your buddy.
The worst stories are all about not getting it in writing.
Not getting it in writing.
Terrible.
That's right. Well, you've put it in writing, my friend. Thanks for all the time. This really was an honor and a pleasure and continued success. And we're in the tri-state area here, so maybe one day we'll be at the same locale and love to break bread and chat more. You're welcome back anytime. We'll keep the porch light on for you, Ramon.
Okay, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You
And thanks
too.
to all your listeners who tuned in too.
Absolutely. And as you do so well, spread the word for us about the Jim Masters show. If you know other folks you
I
think
will.
like to pop on, we would love that.
All right, I'll do that.
You have a great night. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Extraordinary conversation with an extraordinary person, a legend in the industry, Ramon Hervey II. And wow, was that cool, huh? We had an opportunity to go through a lot of different things that he has experienced in his life. And what I think is so great about the book is there are tips in there for just about anybody, regardless of what it is, that you do in your life, whatever path you follow, whatever your inspiration and positivity is. There it is, the Fame Game, an insider's playbook for earning your 15 minutes. Ramon Hervey II. He is a legend in the business, as I mentioned, legendary entertainment manager, brand consultant, PR specialist, author of the Fame Game. And Fame Game is a great book. I read it, and I love that cover too. The cover just, I love that green color, as you guys know. Just really fantastic. As we mentioned, we also, in addition to talking about the book at great length, which we wanted to do because the book is hot off the presses, and kudos to Ramon for, making this available for all of us. Yes, he was married to Vanessa Williams, father of her children. Some of you did ask that. Absolutely. And of course, he worked with her on a career. Vanessa Williams is one of the great talents as well. Rick James, Muhammad Ali, Quincy Jones, the Commodores, Tina Turner. We just scratched the surface. There's just a few of the people he's worked with. Daryl Hall, John Oates. Great stories, too. Bette Midler, Marvin Gaye, the Jacksons, Luther Vandross, Stevie Wonder as well, too, and Diana Ross, Richard Pryor, Natalie Cole. He even mentioned Herb Alpert, too, and that's just the short list, gang. That is just the short list. Cool stuff. A legend stopping by the Jim Masters Show today for all of you, taking you behind the scenes in the music industry, what it's all about, but also the Fame Game, what it is to try to achieve fame. We live in a society where so many people are trying to grab fame, and sometimes you only get a minute. What do you do next? What do you do next? And then there's those who are going for fame only. And then there's folks who fame comes as a result of hard work put in, whatever it is. Good luck on your journey if you're chasing fame. And, he says it's an accolade. I think that's a great way to look at fame. It's like a reward for the hard work put in, all the hours, the time, and you got to be passionate. Whatever it is you want to do in life, hopefully you love what you do. I absolutely love what I do in television, radio, stage, and film, and on camera and on air and behind the scenes. I love it, and I've been doing it for years. One of the reasons why I started this series actually and added this series to my nutty schedule already to communicate with all of you is to take some of that experience I've had for years on television and radio and elsewhere and put it together in what we call the Jim Masters Show, Entertainment Lifestyle Variety Talk Show series. Gang, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would love that. And there is a red button to click. There it is. See it? When you click that red button, make sure that you also click the notification bell. That's very important. When you click the notification bell, that way there, you'll never miss out on any of our episodes. And YouTube, with their algorithms, sometimes you don't get a chance to be alerted about all the episodes, and sometimes you may miss an episode. When you subscribe to the YouTube channel, which costs $0, doesn't cost anything, just hit the red button. You're also going to be welcomed by us into the Jim Masters Show Live lovely family of viewers around the world of all shapes and sizes. We have viewers that are, all different ages, all different backgrounds, male, female, all different genders, all different income levels, zip codes. Everybody's welcome. It doesn't matter where you live, who you are, what your interests are, because we have something for everybody on the Jim Masters Show Live. We're not locked into just one niche. It's an entertainment lifestyle variety talk show. So we have variety. All the guests are different and unique, and there's always something to learn and some good times and laughs to have when we are together here on the Jim Masters Show Live. That's what makes this series unique. Interactivity, responsiveness, but also coming at you with almost 800 episodes as of today, almost. And the fact that we are here for all of you and put a smile on your face. And again, our audience comes from all around the world. We hear from all around the world, which is so beautiful. And I think that's so cool. And all different backgrounds, all ages and interests and political views, no political views, religious views, no religious views. Doesn't matter. You're all welcome to just tune in and enjoy. And we put you to work sometimes by saying, please subscribe. And don't forget to give this episode a like. I got a thumbs up like if you enjoyed it, if you were entertained, informed, had a good time with us. Help us out. Give us a thumbs up. That really helps us. Helps also the algorithm to get the episodes blasted out to more people around the world. And don't forget to leave a comment on the YouTube channel as well. Right underneath this episode, there's a comment section on the YouTube channel. Leave a comment for us. We would love that as well. We've got some extraordinary guests. Oh boy, I'm so excited about some of the guests that we just booked today. We booked about 9 more guests just today alone for future episodes. We have a whole full week of shows. Saturday happens to be my birthday. I cannot believe that that's happening. September 24th is my birthday. But we've got some extraordinary guests that are coming up throughout the week, every day, just about, if not every day, as we have been doing here since we started the Jim Masters Show live series with all of you watching around the world. So, gang, we are going to wrap up here. We don't say goodbye. We say see you later. Ciao, cheer. We cheer you and cheers to everybody. Hasta la vista. Avida Zane, Slunch. I really should write this down so I remember them all. Shalom, Moilu, take care, Slancha, and all the rest. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host, Jim Masters. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for your time this time. Till next time, we'll be here for you. If you watched this episode live, thank you very much. Give it a thumbs up. If you watched this Memorex, you watched it later on in the archives, which we encourage you to do because there's hundreds of episodes you can binge watch in the archives right here for all of you on, there it is, the Jim Masters Show. We'll see you on the next one, gang. Love you all. Take care and be well. Have a great day. From JMS Lovety Hall, Jim Masters here. Be well. Take care. Cheers.